Hello world, hello, welcome back once again to the Unchristian Podcast. My name is Ndumiso Mazibu. I am your host for this episode. Once again, thank you for your support always and joining us today. Maybe it's your first time and maybe you have not subscribed. If that's you, please click on that subscribe button, click on the notification bell so that you can be notified concerning any new content that we release, so you can be up to date with our new episodes and so forth. We really appreciate your support and helping us to grow. Once again, today we are having a political conversation. As we began a while ago, we are in election season, not just in South Africa, but it's an election year for so many countries around the world. Over 50% of the world's population is voting this year of 2024, and South Africa is one of them. We have a critical election that we have, and some are calling it the new 1994. We're expecting change. We're expecting a lot of interesting things to come up and to happen, particularly when it comes to seeing how coalition politics and coalition governments are going to be shaped after May. And with me today is the very leader, the president of ATM, African Transformation Movement, Mr. Vuyo Zungula, and he's here today to tell us about why should we vote for ATM? Why should I vote in the first place? Why should I be interested? We still have an opportunity to register to vote online on the IEC's website, and so I want to challenge you, especially as a young person, go out there and register so that you can vote, make your voice heard. Your voice matters. Mr. Vuyo Zungula, welcome to the Unchristian Podcast. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the platform and the opportunity.
Yeah. I was joking before we were shooting, but you must be so tired of these interviews. You are all over the place. We see you on all television channels, radio. Last night I was listening to you on radio, on SAFM. Wow, how has this been for you? How has campaigning been for you?
Campaign is always hectic. We have to keep on keeping on.
Yes.
We can't afford to get tired. I was saying to a friend of mine, when it's campaign season, you can't afford to be tired. You can't afford to be sick. You just need to be at your best at all times.
Every day is important.
Yeah,
and that's great. And this is not the first time the ATM is campaigning. The ATM, unlike other parties, smaller parties, was not just formed now, this year or last year. You've been in existence for close to 6 years or over 6 years, right? And you competed, you contested the local government elections. There was 2021. How did things go for you back in that election? And what kind of growth have you seen in the party from that point coming here?
Yeah. So our first election was the national election in 2019.
All right.
So we have got 2 seats in Parliament, one in the Eastern Cape, one in KZN. So that particular election was difficult in the sense that we were contesting for the first time. As we're contesting for the first time, we're obviously learning some of the things, being exposed to some of the difficulties that come with being in politics.
Yeah.
But it was something that was more of an eye-opener in terms of understanding how the country operates, how politics works.
Right.
So when you went to the election in 2021, we were much better off in terms of the experience. That is why our electoral support grew from 2019 to 2021. And we were also anticipating, very, very certain that our electoral support is going to grow this year. We think that in the past 4 years we've been in Parliament, we have made our solid contributions as to the direction the country should be taking. We've dealt with the bread and butter issues that concern the lived realities of the people.
Yes, sir.
Also dealt with the so-called political issues concerning the abuse of power and corruption by powerful politicians. So we have had that balance between bread and butter issues and the abuse of power and corruption of the ones that are in power.
Sure, but internally, from the point you took over as leader, what aspects of growth have happened within the party? Did your structures grow? Did membership grow? Did your policy positions become more crystallized? What victory points can you point out?
Yeah, I think the first would be the growth of membership. We are growing in terms of membership almost on a daily basis. Even the support base, we have people that are saying that they are not, because of currently where they work, they are not going to be able to be active members, but they are going to vote ATM, they are going to support ATM.
All right.
We also have, in terms of the policies, because us being in Parliament afforded us now the opportunity to spearhead some of the policy proposals that we had in 2019.
Yes, sir.
So they became more crystallized. That is why last year we had a policy conference, which was set out to make sure that there's clarity in terms of our policies, so that our manifesto as well is based on the lived experiences of the people, and also taking into account the experience we've gained in Parliament in understanding how the policies are actually being implemented. Then that is why we've got now the manifesto that is based on that policy conference.
All right. When the ATM first started, it was touted or labeled as a religious organization. And there's a strong element of faith in the organization. And of course, personally, I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor, and so I connect with that. Are you a Christian party? What does faith have to do, or what role does it play in the politics of the ATM and the policy positions as well? Because someone could be watching there and say, yeah, they say 80% of South Africans are Christians, but hey, I'm not really going to church, I'm not really practicing. Someone comes from another religion maybe, says, is this party, can this party speak to my issues? Talk to us about faith and the ATM.
We are a faith-based organization. Faith-based in the context that we've got a certain value system.
It's about values.
We've got a set of values that unite everyone, whether they're Christian, they're coming from another religion, because we are of the view that if we want to unite the country, we want the country to work, and to get the country to work, sometimes it may not work if we are going to push one religion instead of another. However, there's a set of values which virtually all of the religions agree with and subscribe to. For example, peace. Go to all of the religions that you have. Peace is very important. Ubuntu as well. The concept of transforming, which is the changing of for the better of people's lives. Servant leadership. And accountability. So for us, faith is critical in that particular context because it unites us, and it does not make one person to feel alienated because they subscribe to a different religion. But critically, even with all of the different religions, these values, the faith-based element, it is something that it is common, because if you look at religion, you may find different religions, people practicing different religions, but there are those commonalities. So our faith-based approach now focuses on those commonalities so that we're able to unite. So, because we need to work together, because of the view as a party that we just need a human-driven politics. Human-driven politics in the sense that we need to work on the character of the human being, because you may have the policies on the economy, on land, on agriculture, on all of these things, but if the spirituality and the moral character of the person is not dealt with, or is not, we've not improved we've not built the moral character of the person, then all of these policies are not going to take us anywhere. I want to make a practical example. Let's talk about crime, for example. We've got a very, very big problem of crime.
Huge.
And corruption.
Huge, yeah.
And if you look at what is the source of crime and corruption, it is people that have lost their moral character.
Sure.
Because there's no way, for example, you could be umntu that subscribes to Ubuntu and still steal, because Ubuntu makes you understand ungumntu ngenxa yabanye abantu. Now, immediately you're in a position of power, then it means you need to use that position for the benefit of other people, not yourself.
Yeah.
So,
what do you say to that person, Ozoti? Crime is a result of poverty.
okay.
Do you completely disagree that it's just morality?
Crime is caused by various factors.
Sure.
If you go to some of the poor countries, you find that the country is basically poor. Yes, there will be rich people here and there,
Yeah.
but you find that in as much as there is majority of people that are in poverty, but they do not have the high levels of crime as we have in our country. So we just need to understand crime, that we don't have crime that has one source, which is poverty, or one source which is lack of morality.
Definitely.
Yeah, it is because of various reasons. So that is why in dealing with crime, you need to deal with the question of poverty, you need to deal with the question of inequality,
Yes, right.
and you also need to deal with the question of what is our character as a country.
Right.
Because if we don't answer that critical question, the country might be there, but you may find that we are going to have destructive tendencies whereby we self-destruct as a country, because we do not have, number one, a shared identity. We do not have a character that is constructive. Instead, we've got a character that is destructive as a country.
Yeah. You know, I did mention this term in my introduction, that they say 2024 is our new 1994. And we can talk about that and debate it. But also what I was thinking about recently was the fact that this election is over the soul and identity of South Africa.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be South African?
Yeah. You know, for us as a party, we were of the strong view that we need to build the moral character first.
Yes, sir.
We need to build the spirituality first of the people, because firstly, we are Africans.
Yeah.
And Africans are spiritual beings. You know, spiritual beings are people that have got a high level of consciousness.
That's right.
Consciousness is the one thing that tells you when you're about to do something wrong, that no, we can't do this. It's that inner voice. Now, if your consciousness is dead, then it means you can kill, you can rape babies, you know, you can steal millions from the poor, because you know, you don't have that inner GPS that is telling you whether you're doing something right or you're doing something wrong.
What's that word in Xhosa? Unembeza.
ngesiZulu.
Xhosa into njani?
Umbilini.
Yes.
So singabantu abanjalo, abantu abanombilini.
Yeah.
So for us, what should define a South African is firstly the spirituality part. What should define then what comes from spirituality is that consciousness, whereby you're conscious as a person as to everything that you do. You ask yourself, Ukuba, where is it taking us as a people? Is it something that is taking us backwards as a people? Is it something that is taking us forward as a people? For example, we are talking here about, we're talking just now about the question of crime, whether it's caused by poverty.
Yeah.
Now, you may have a tavern in the townships or in the village, tavern that is selling alcohol. Yeah. Because you want to address a problem of poverty. But if you do not have morality, it means you are going to be profit driven to an extent of even selling alcohol to underage children. Because you are not concerned about the impact of exposing 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds into this substance called alcohol, because your focus is only on yourself, being able to get money so that you are out of poverty.
So what you're describing is capitalism, right?
Yeah.
It's the heart of capitalism. Yeah. Is capitalism anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-Christian values?
Definitely, it is.
So what should we swap it for?
You know, we need to have an approach that is based on humanism, because humanism is all about the next person, it's all about the people, about the broader society, whereas capitalism is so inward looking, it's so selfish. One could argue that Ujimuel from the Bible was a capitalist because he was unable, to donate or give, what he had to the poor. So that is why of the view that even if you look at the Bible, Jesus and the many disciples are encouraging, the sharing of resources.
Yeah.
That is why, there's, I think it's in the book of Acts.
Yeah, that's our model. Very good model there.
Yeah, where it speaks about inhlalo yamakristu ukuba the Christians back then, they sold their possessions and shared amongst one another based on the needs of the individual people.
And it says you couldn't see a difference between rich and poor among them.
Yeah. So that is what the Bible says. Now, that is why you find that the manner in which South Africa is so broken, you may find that you may even have churches that when you look at their conduct, they're also, they're not in line with the gospel of Christ.
Sure.
If you follow how now Jesus was speaking to Peter, he says to Peter, Peter, do you love me? Feed my sheep, feed my flock. Now, you may find that currently we have more religious leaders who are concerned about them being fed instead of the feeding and the well-being of their congregants, which is something that is not in line with what the Bible subscribes to, because you may find that we are going to have religious leaders, church leaders who are going to say, but we don't partake in politics. But the congregants are languishing in poverty. They are unemployed. They are finding it difficult to go to school because they do not have money. But if you are going to have now leaders who subscribe to the gospel of Christ, who do not enlighten their congregants to say, God so loved the world that he gave us his only son, meaning God loves the world, and if we are also in the image of God, we also need to love the world by loving our country. Loving our country means we need to actively work towards making the country better.
Gotcha. Would I be wrong if I said if EFF and ACDP were to get married and have a baby, that baby will be called ATM?
I don't know. First time I'm hearing this.
It just hit me now.
Yeah.
Because you understand what I'm saying. You've got the biblical, the values-driven politics, moral regeneration, movement kind of politics. Then you've got socialist values that are also at the core of the EFF. So to broaden that question, why didn't you work with another existing party? And therefore, we will ask, then part two of that question would be, what then differentiates you from the other ones that are there and that necessitated the formation of the ATM?
Critically, when we speak about this thing, you may find that other people find it very difficult to comprehend.
Yeah.
The problem with our politics is that politicians are not independent, and even parties are not independent, in the context that many political parties are funded somewhere. Now, when a party is funded somewhere, then there is that great risk that it will now do the bidding of whoever that is funding them. So we found that is the core problem of our politics, that parties, instead of advocating for what is right by the people, they need to take care of the interests of whoever that is funding them. So we found it difficult now to get into a system or get into parties that have got other masters instead of the citizens being the masters. So that is why we said, Tina, what makes us different from many other parties is that, number one, we are funded by our members.
Right.
We do not have major funders that a person is going to give us 5 million rands, 10 million rands, because even Thomas Sankara said it, whoever funds you controls you. So would not want to be in a situation whereby when we speak in rallies, when we speak in the manifesto campaigns, we are going to say one thing, but where it matters the most in parliament, we are going to say something that is different. Because many people do not really understand that when you vote for a party, you're not really voting for the leader. You're not even voting for the manifesto policies, but you're voting for the interests of whoever that is funding that person, because whoever funds you controls you. So that is what greatly influenced us to say, let's start our own thing, so that we're able to grow it independently. That's why the growth of the ATM has been organic.
Right.
You may find other parties, they don't struggle in terms of bussing people around. They don't struggle in terms of having posters all over the country. They don't struggle buying airtime. But the question is, at what cost? The cost is the cost of not being able to represent the very same people that you want, you claim to be representing. So that is why, in our view, we said, put aside the policies, put aside maybe the ideologies, but critically, what informs a political party? What informs a political party is who controls that party. So we are controlled by the people, because we get everything from the people. Parties, other parties, they are controlled by the people that fund them, but they will not go out there publicly and say, we are controlled by these people. But I can guarantee you, look, for example, on many issues that we have in our country, many parties, you just see who's funding them, and then you get to see that the positions of some of these parties are aligned to whoever that is funding them. So that is why the question of funding is critical to our politics.
All right, sir. Thandeka, can you give me the paper, the manifesto? I forgot to take it with me. Let me see, I gave us. Thank you. Mr. President, what is the true state of the nation? Last week or so, we heard President Ramaphosa deliver what is called the State of the Nation address. And he spoke to us about Dinswalo. And Dinswalo has been as a buzzword all over now. You were not happy with the State of the Nation address. Why is that? What do you think the president is missing or not understanding?
You know, when we speak about the state of the nation, a nation is defined, in our view, by its people. Now, that is why we always speak about the moral character as well as the spirituality. Because over and above, there are other elements, but buthini ubuntu of the people. South Africans, if you look at the history of being colonized, apartheid, and then you've got 30 years of broken promises, that has destroyed it has destroyed the essence or the soul of South Africans. That is why if you go to many people, especially people that have been voting and not seeing any tangible results, they've given up on the country. They don't care whether the country is going or coming, like they've given up.
Disillusioned, tired.
They are so despondent, and it's because of the 30 years of broken promises, apartheid, and being colonized. So that is why we are always of the view that in fixing the country, we need again to work on the minds of the people. By working the minds of the people, it is basically to remind people that no matter what happens in our country, we must always remain positive, and we must always remain steadfast in fixing the country, getting the country to work, so that our future generations get to inherit a better country. Now, if you are going to have citizens that are not concerned about how the next generation is going to live and the product of the next generation, you've got a broken society. Hence, you find most of now these problems are coming or are stemming from a broken society. Now, if you look at now the indicators, whether it's economic, it's crime, it's social, it paints a bleak picture. Because if you look at the unemployment rate, it is the highest in the world. If you look at the crime rates, 75 people are murdered on a daily basis. The food basket prices is like 5,000. The repo rates are very high. If you look at load shedding as well. So we've got a country, one would argue that it is very close to collapsing because all the recipes for a failed state are here in our country. Because if you are going to talk about a failed state, we are going to be talking about high crime rates,
Sure.
High unemployment rates, instability of energy.
Yeah.
All of those things are here in our country.
Amen, yeah.
It's just a question of what it's like. Kudingeka just one thing to put the country over the edge.
Yeah.
That is why when there was unrest in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people were confining it to the arrest of the former president. But of the view that it is something that is more beyond the arrest of the president, which is Mr. Zuma.
Yeah.
We've got a country whereby if people are unemployed in the millions and high levels of poverty, you are bound to have such instances happening.
Yeah.
That is why if you are going to have a truck maybe delivering any product in the townships or any product in an area whereby there's poverty, there's high chances it's going to be looted. Therefore, that looting that happened back then cannot be confined to President Zuma, because even after people were looting, even yesterday, I was seeing a video of a cash in transit heist, and people went there, even though there were securities, there were police, people wanted to loot the money because of poverty.
Yeah.
Therefore, if we do not address the poverty, the unemployment, then there's a risk that looting and everything that would go wrong can happen at any given time, given the true state of the nation.
Sure. In the case of an ATM government, you're in government. We are talking hypothetically. You're in government. You've got a chance to form a cabinet, form a government. What would we see in your first 100 days? And I don't know why 100 days is used as a measure in the world of politics. But I think you understood what I'm saying. Key priorities, urgent priorities for you.
Look, we always of the view that we need to address the question of getting people to be economically active.
Sure.
Because you can't work with people that are hungry. A person that is hungry, they are desperate. They could do anything. They could even kill. They could even, do things that is outside of their moral character. So that is why the point of departure is getting people active, so that we're able to, to get rid of poverty as a start. Because once people now are economically active, then you are able now to have a decent conversation with them, because abalambang. And how do we do that? We are saying that, firstly, we need to change how government does business, or how government spends its money.
Right.
Currently, government spends more than 80% of its money on big businesses.
Okay.
Big business such as your Bidvest, your big construction companies, etc. Now, what that does is that it makes small businesses unable to compete in the economy.
Right.
And everywhere in the world, jobs are created predominantly by SMMEs.
Yes.
So we would now, as the party, introduce legislation that compels compels government entities, municipalities, etc., to procure at the very least 50% of everything that they use on SMMEs. That is the first one, because we want to have legislation. We do not want to have political ideas that cannot be translated into law, because we argue what sustained apartheid and transformed apartheid, it was because there was a political idea of segregation. It was reduced to law. In other words, we may have all of these political ideas on how to transform the economy, but if it is not law, then you are not going to be able to implement. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that there needs to be goods, basic goods that are not going to be imported. They are going to be produced here locally. What we have in our country, we've got an economy whereby we are largely consumers, we are largely even importing some of the products. We've got something as basic as a toothpick that is going to be produced in another country.
Imagine.
And you ask yourself, something as so basic as a toothpick, you can't tell me in the country, we can't say, here's a list of products, whether it's toothpicks, it's towels, it's soaps, goods that we use on a daily basis. Those goods must be produced here in South Africa. And not only in Johannesburg or Cape Town or Durban, but they must be produced in the different districts, so that you have people if you are coming from uKhahlamba region, the economy of uKhahlamba region must circulate amongst the people of uKhahlamba so that the people of uKhahlamba are able to to partake in the economy as producers instead of consumers, because people celebrate when malls go to the villages and the townships. But you ask yourself, why should we celebrate consumerism? Because now it means people are just consuming. They are not producing anything, because the question should be, the products that are in those malls, where are they coming from? If they are coming from outside of the country, they are coming from selected areas in our country, it means we are not transforming the economy. So for us, that is what critically would do to transform the economy and get people to be economically active, and would transform the township economy, because the township economy currently, it is an economy that is an anomaly in the context that you've got. There was a study that was done by Northwest University, whereby 86% of informal or township businesses in the province are dominated by non-South Africans. It does not happen anywhere in the world, not even first world countries, whereby natives are so displaced or dislodged from the economy to an extent whereby they only occupy 14%, let alone a developing country such as society, such as South Africa. So that is why you're of the view now as the ATM that you need to transform the township economy, so that more often than not, wherever that you go to, any township, any village, you need to see a mazibuko that is operating, a Zungula operating, Mbalo, Mzobo operating, because it will mean that the money is going to circulate amongst the people from those localities, instead of money going to this trader that is coming from Pakistan. And those traders, they drain our economy, because when a person comes from Pakistan to run a business here, he's not moving here permanently. He's coming here to run a business, and he's going to take money back to his respective country, meaning that the money that we are taking to these traders is not used to develop our communities. Rather, it is drained and it goes back to develop a country in Asia. So for us, in the first 100 days, that would be our priority, because we believe that those interventions, because of the nature of the agency, they would make South Africans to be economically active almost on an immediate nature, including the question of agriculture, where we are of the view that there needs to be an agricultural revolution, whereby in this garden that we have here, you must farm the products that you use, the vegetables that you use, you must predominantly get them from here. And we've got assistant agricultural practitioners, which is our young people who are educated, who are qualified, but they do not have work because, farming is not prioritized in our country. Go to Botswana. Botswana has got a law that forces any retailer that they must buy 90% of whatever produce from local farmers. Previously, Botswana was dependent on South African farmers. And, South African farmers were up in arms talking about how we need to work together. But Botswana was very adamant to say, we need to prioritize the people of Botswana in this particular concept of agriculture. So of the view now as a party that in our retailers in our country, you can't go to a retailer in Newcastle and you find that almost all of the produce there is coming from outside of Newcastle. And you find that the local farmers, predominantly black farmers in Newcastle, are not having any shelf space. So we're of the view that there needs to be a law again that says 50% of the fresh produce that is in any shelf, any retailer, must come from the local emerging farmers.
Sure. That's great, sir. All right. So do you, what I'm hearing from you is that you will continue BEE, and the current procurement system in government, which is tenders, will that continue under an ATM government?
So BEE is, never mind the fact that you've got people that are in government that are using a policy that is set out to benefit the citizens, particularly the marginalized citizens. but they use it in an incorrect manner.
Yeah.
The problem is not the policy or the system. The problem is the people that are implementing the system.
Okay, all right.
So BE is 100% correct.
So BE can work.
Yeah, it should work.
Right.
If you've got the right drivers, it's going to work. The second question, what was the second question?
About it was just BEE and
tenders.
Tenders.
You spoke about tenders. We're of the view that we need to have built state capacity for some of the work that should be done by the state.
Yeah.
Not everything should go to tender, in the sense that we can't have high levels of unemployment, and then you are going to say to fix potholes you are going to have you are going to issue tenders.
Yes.
Whereas you know that at the state that our roads are in, it would require that there's more work that is done.
Sure.
So in our view, issues such as fixing potholes should be something that is done internally by the state.
Okay.
And then for some of the complex issues, projects, then you would require then to have tenders.
Sure.
So we're of the view that because now the issue now with the government is that the capacity of the state is crippled in favor of tenders, predominantly because these people who are in the helm of government are benefiting because some of the companies that are doing tenders with the state,
Sure.
they've got such relations with.
Sure.
So that is why they do not have any issue in destroying the capacity of the state.
Yeah.
So we are of the view that build the capacity of the state as much as possible must be able to provide goods and services to its people.
You're right.
Now, in areas whereby the state does not lacks capacity, only then the private sector must come in.
I see. Let's look at some of the points that you've laid out and presented in your manifesto. I'll just pick out some of them. One, which is a hot topic, is the issue of land.
Yeah.
And your policy on that is that land must be expropriated without compensation. But additionally to that, the ATM believes that only South African citizens should own land. Wow, that is very bold.
Yeah.
That's radical. That is wow. It's a very bold policy position to take. Some people then will say, does not South Africa belong to all who live in it?
Yeah, the question of foreigners owning land, it is something that we should be able to look at it from a futuristic point of view. To say that you've got people that have got dollars, you've got pounds, who, because of the strength of those currencies, are able to buy out, land in our country, and inadvertently make South Africans not to afford land or afford some of the properties in their own countries.
Yeah.
If you go to places like Abo Camps Bay and the other areas whereby you've got British nationals, Americans there that are buying property there.
Yeah.
Now you find that ultimately their interest in buying land in those areas has made South Africans being unable to compete, because you as a South African, to have 2 million rands to buy a property there, it will take a lot. Very few will actually be able to afford. But what is 2 million rands to a rich American? Because with the dollar, with our exchange rates, it is basically peanuts for him.
It's cheap.
So many countries, they limit land ownership to its citizens,
Right.
because gradually, if you are going to have foreigners owning land and they are able to buy land with the high levels of poverty, even people can sell land because they basically want.
Sure.
But ask yourself, in 50 years, if now these foreigners are, gradually buying land, you may find that South Africans would not be able to own land in their own country.
Sure.
So what other countries do, they lease land to foreigners, meaning you can rent land or property, whether it's a farm or an agricultural area or it's a residential area, but for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
But you are not given ownership, because you are preventing a state whereby you get to displace South Africans from land ownership. So that is the context. It's not hatred of anyone, but it is also learning from how other countries are safeguarding the interest of of those countries instead of opening up the country to an extent whereby gradually people of those countries are unable now to own land in their own country.
You know, our next door neighbor, Zimbabwe, they had a radical land expropriation program under the late President Mugabe. And the way they executed it caused havoc for their economy, for peace and security in the country. They experienced global isolation in the world with sanctions and so on. How do we expropriate land without compensation in South Africa without causing damage to the nation, to the stability of our nation in that process? Or is that stability inevitable and unavoidable?
The point of departure is to get the right people, because I think predominantly when land was taken in Zimbabwe, it was given to the politically connected.
Okay.
Just like what we have here now, to an extent whereby some of the state contracts, the BEE, it's politically connected that benefit.
Sure.
So that is at the core. However, because land expropriation in Zimbabwe would have actually created a state in the entire continent that would make Africans, all of the African countries, to say, but why our minerals being owned by companies coming from America, from Britain, etc. So let us sanction Zimbabwe. Let's make sure Zimbabwe is unstable, so that we create that image to other countries to say they must never touch the land, otherwise they are going to go to the route of Zimbabwe. Because the question of sanctions, the question of the world or these superpowers sanctioning such countries, it is not done it's not principle based, but it is done to sustain imperialism. It is done to sustain how Africa remains poor, and also those countries remain rich by the resources of Africa. So for us, what then becomes important, number one, get the right people who are going to drive a land reform program in the best interest of the people, not only for people who are politically connected, and ensuring that currently, because currently you've got land that is in the hands of government. So let us use that land now, train as much farmers as possible, so that when land expropriation does happen, you don't have a case whereby you're taking people that do not have a market, do not have any expertise, and you think that now food security will not be harmed. Because if you are reckless in your approach, then you are going to follow Zimbabwe. But if you are systematic in your approach, obviously learning from Zimbabwe, also preempting how the world superpowers would react, then you are able now to deal, you are able to counter whatever that the world superpowers would want to do to destabilize our country. But I do want to emphasize the point: land must be returned to its owners. We can't accept that a person or a group of people were killed, they lost their lives, and now we just need to forget about that. If we were to talk, for example, about Holocaust, we talk about 9/11. If you go to America, go to Israel, they talk about those injustices. In our country, we can't be apologetic to talk about the injustice of being colonized and apartheid. And there needs to be, retribution. We need to correct the wrongs, because I think 2 weeks ago I was reading about a person that used to be a security guard in one of the prisons when they were killing the Jews. That person was tried now as old as he is, meaning they are correcting the wrong. So even that, we need to correct the
reparations.
wrongs. Reparations. But I also want to emphasize the point at the world superpowers, they want Africa to remain poor. And in doing so, they are going to have propaganda, they're going to use the media, they're going to fund politicians, they're going to fund voices that are weight in our country to try and dissuade South Africans from being free, because it is anomaly in our country and the continent that we are so rich in terms of minerals, but the continent is so poor.
Yeah.
It is poor because we don't own our minerals. So land expropriation is part of a process of, now let us own the minerals, because it is God who decided to make us to be birthed here in South Africa, in the continent. Yeah. God did not make us to be born in America. So we don't have claim to whatever Americans have. We don't have claim to whatever the Asians have, or whatever the Australians have. Yeah. We only have a claim to what Africa has, to what South Africa has. But we can't claim it in terms of just speaking about it. Yeah. We always say that South Africa has got gold, diamonds, and all of these minerals. But I can ask you, have I ever seen, it's difficult to have a conversation with a South African. You ask them, have you ever seen a diamond? Have you ever seen a gold? And at the same time, do you know a South African that actually owns a gold mine? Do you know a native South African that owns a diamond mine? Simply because Tito sneakily these things. Sure. But the world powers that be that colonized us are retaining our wealth.
Under the ATM government, will a white person be able to own land? Will they be able to run a huge business?
Yeah, definitely. Any South African will be enabled to run businesses, to own land. For us, that is our principle, because our values, we believe in humanism. Sure. The issue, on the question of race, the issue is not white people per se, but it is white supremacy. It is the white domination of the economy, whereby you've got an economy whereby the domination is in white hands. Right. So that is what we need to control. It is the domination. Similarly, on the question of land ownership, the issue, it is land ownership that is predominantly in white hands, whereby whites account, a tiny fraction of our country, but they own more than 87% of the land, whereas Africans, abantu abamnyama, account for the majority, but are only owning a tiny fraction of the land. So those anomalies are the ones that need to be addressed. And any rational white person understands the social structure of our country, the economic structure, and the land structure of our country. And any white person that wants to live, in our country in peace, black and white, whereby sonke siyafana, sonke siyalingana, they will never be against the transformation, because transformation is the one vehicle that will make South Africans to be able to live peacefully amongst one another.
Yeah, so let's close it off by talking about corruption within government. And I want us, as a point of departure, to talk about Phala Phala, that scandal surrounding the president. First of all, is that issue over now, right? We saw Parliament reject the report. We saw the ruling party opposing this, left, right, and center. Public protector said the president has done no wrong. The South African Reserve Bank also released a statement saying we found nothing wrong here. Is Phala Phala over? And extending that question, how do we deal with corruption within government?
Phala Phala, the SG of the ruling party made a confession that after the report of the independent panel of Parliament released their report, the President Ramaphosa had already resigned. It was just a matter of informing the nation.
I heard, yeah.
That informs you that by his own understanding, the president realized that he's done something wrong, and therefore he needs to vacate that office. Now, because of how the country is structured in terms of our governance, you've got many institutions that are dependent on the president for them, for their heads to be appointed or to be removed. The public protector, even though Parliament does its interviews, but the people that decides who gets to be the public protector is the ruling party that is headed by the president. It is the president that appoints the head of the NPA, that appoints the head of SARS
Yeah.
and all of these institutions. But if you look at the report that was done by the independent panel, it is independent people, retired judges,
Yeah.
who have no interest
Yeah.
in being appointed in any government
Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
So that is why they were able to independently craft a report. Now, that report, no one has challenged it. However, the report of the public protector, report of the Reserve Bank,
Yeah.
currently it is subject to being challenged in court.
Yeah.
Meaning, even the president did not have any mettle to say this report of the independent panel is wrong. I'm going to take it to court and overturn it. And you know what's funny about the independent panel report is that sometimes they speak about the State Capture Commission report and they refuse to talk in the very same light about the Pala report,
Okay.
because they're both done by it was basically Judicial Commission of Inquiries,
Sure,
both of them.
sure.
Now, the Pala is far from over because now of these court proceedings.
Okay.
Because Parliament, Section 42.3 of the Constitution, directs Parliament to scrutinize the actions of the executive. Now, you can't have a Parliament that is going to issue, that is going to ask an independent panel to look whether there could be wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And the independent panel says, yes, based on the information that is before us, there could be wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And Parliament says, all right, we're not going to investigate
Further.
this possible wrongdoing, whereas there is a report there could be wrongdoing. So that's the first thing. So Pala, given these reports that are taken,
Sure.
is far from over.
Okay.
Now, how we need to deal with corruption in the public sector is that we need to follow what Singapore did, in the sense that Singapore targeted the corrupt politicians, because we hear about corruption left, right, and center, but we ask ourselves, how have we not heard about a minister, a president actually being imprisoned for corruption?
Yeah.
Whereas in Singapore, they were very harsh when it comes to public representatives.
Yes.
Go to China, almost every month or so, we hear about high-ranking political officers
Sure.
or public representatives actually being sent to the death penalty because of corruption. But in our country, if you are corrupt, you just removed from this position of being minister,
Yeah.
you sent to be an ambassador somewhere else.
Yeah.
So we are of the view that for corrupt public officers and public representatives, the sanction should be a minimum of 25 years without the possibility of parole.
And that's for corruption.
For corruption. Because if we don't send a strong message that we are going to deal decisively with corruption, because the enablers of corruption, it is the public representatives.
Sure.
Even though the private sector are the ones that are, the corruption of the private sector is not dealt with it enough.
Sure.
However, the private sector can never have corruption or can never facilitate corruption without the enabler, which is now the politician.
Yeah, I get you, sir. Wow. So much you've said. You've given us so much to think about. As we close, we have an audience that is predominantly between age 25 and 45. So it's a young audience. Why should they bother themselves by voting? Why should they register in these few days that are still open? Does it matter?
Voting does matter. If, let's say the country had 1,000 people, you had 900 people who do not participate in voting. These 900 people have got the best interests of the country.
Yeah.
If these 100 people are thieves, when they are voted for by the other thieves, then it means the country is going to be ruled by thieves.
Sure.
Now, it's only ruled by thieves because the people that have got the best interests of the country refuse to participate in voting.
Yeah.
Whereas the 900 people, they can't blame anyone for their lack of for the state of the country, because it is by their participation that we are now governed by thieves. Because they participated in voting and actually voted for people that share the very same values with them, then the country would be governed in a manner that is progressive.
Okay.
Now, whether we like it or not, a government will always exist.
Yes.
Even if come now in these elections, 10% of the population votes, a government will always exist.
Yes.
Now, you can't blame anyone. Second issue is that the direction of the country depends on the type of leaders that are elected. Now, if you elect the righteous leaders, God-fearing leaders, then you are most likely to see God-fearing leadership.
Sure.
You are most likely to see leaders that are actually putting the interests of the people first.
Yes.
Now, when people vote, they need to vote for such leaders, and they need to make their mark in terms of actually voting. Because if you look at the minority, which is white people, they know the power of voting. That is why if you go to the urban areas, uzobona umakhulu omdala, that's a white person, carrying a camp chair, waiting outside the voting station, because they are voting for their interests.
Yes.
They are voting for someone that will represent them.
Sure.
But go to our villages and our townships, the day of voting is a day whereby people are just having fun.
Yeah.
And we've got no one to blame if we don't participate in voting when things don't go our way.
Sure.
Because if you look at the problems that we have in our country, people need to ask themselves a question. If they don't vote, what do they think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Do they think that we're going to sleep today, miraculously wake up tomorrow, everything is fine? If South Africans went to exile, they fought for the country because they wanted what's best for the country. We are a product of such South Africans. So the least we can do is to register to vote, go on voting day, vote ATM, and then the country will be better off.
Right.
So I want to implore South Africans, make your mark, vote for your interests by voting for a people-centered organization.
Yeah.
An organization that is in the pocket of citizens, that is not in the pocket of any company, any foreign agency, or any drug dealer, because ATM is funded by the people. That is why when you observe what we've said in Parliament in the past 5 years, we've lashed out against illegal immigration, lashed out against rand manipulation, against the domination of the big business in the economy. Also on the lack of morality, because if you watch TV now, you're most likely going to see programs that are actually promoting drugs, crime, sex, and all of those things. And you ask ourselves, where are we going as a country? Back in the day, we used to have educational programs such as Soul City, because the country was responding to the problem of HIV and AIDS back then. So we are that organization as the ATM that is alive to all of these realities. That is why we've been able to speak out openly about everything. So a vote for ATM is a vote for your interest as a South African that wants to live in a better country.
Thank you so much, sir. We are looking forward to see what the ATM is going to do in the elections, how they're going to do, and after that, your contribution to government. The past 5 years, in my opinion, of your time in Parliament and as a party has been very good. You've been consistent, and we're looking forward to the contribution you're going to make to national building. Thank you for coming and visiting us here today.
Thank you so much. And all the best. I also want to say, whoever's watching, please subscribe. I always say to I always say to young people, we take most of our time engaging in discussions that don't take us anywhere.
Absolutely.
So such platforms such as this one, it is conversations that make us as a nation to be better.
That's right.
I know we're out of time. But if I can just make a comparison.
Go for it.
What is making Afrikaners, when they see that their language is not going to be the medium of instruction at tags, AUOFs, they decide to build their university because they want to preserve their heritage and identity.
Right.
It is because they know who they are and they know what they want to achieve. And they have conversations building them towards that particular ideal. But Tina, we all focus on conquer, on whoever is twerking, or we are taking part in conversations that are not taking us anywhere as a people. So if there's one thing that we need to change, particularly as young people, let's engage ourselves in conversations that take us as a people in the right direction.
Fully
because
agreed.
abantwana bethu, because Afrikaners' children are going to inherit that university.
Yes.
But abantwana bethu, what are they going to inherit?
Oh, man, I hear you. Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the president of the ATM, African Transformation Movement. You will see them on the ballot paper. You'll see them everywhere on social media, news channels, everywhere in the press and the media. They are there. Listen to what they're saying, understand better where they stand and where they want to take this country, so that your vote is an educated vote. It's an informed vote that will be a positive contribution that you are making to the betterment of the country. Well, there was a conversation. Leave a comment if there's a question. Leave it there. If there's something you want to say or ask the ATM, leave it there. We'll get the message to the ATM, and we'll be able to get a response for you. But anyway, from the Unchristian Network, it's goodbye for now.